So when we are inserting something, this is the kind of update that is going to happen every time we insert a line inside this invoice has item, right? So that's what we've seen before. Now I just would like to open a connection and to show you a couple of things. One of them is what happens if I delete something after inserting it. But let's just now make this work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to insert this data. So I'm going to insert a new invoice. This is the invoice number 1, and these are the item inside that invoice number 1. So there are invoice number 1, the item number 1 with quantity 5 and the price. And same thing, this time with the same invoice number 1, but with the ID of item number 2, I'm going to take 10 and 60. All of these items, if you remember, I have some inserts here. We have 3 items. All of them starts with 100. So if I'm doing this normally, this is the kind of update that the trigger is going to do. It's going to subtract 5 from the item number 1 and then 10 from the item number 2, because this is what we're doing here, right? Update item set quantity stock equal quantity stock minus new dot quantity sold. Remember, there's only one very important rule with this new dot, is that whatever comes after that, the dot, has to be a column from this table. Whatever comes after the dot is a column from this table. So if I type a name of a column that doesn't exist in invoice has item, that's a mistake. So every time you have this new dot, means this is a value. Which value is it? It's the value that was inserted in that column. So every time when I execute this insert statement, there's an after insert trigger that is waiting for some insert to happen. When the insert happens, this is going to be executed, and then the new.id item is going to be the new value that was inserted. Sorry, this is not the ID item, this is the ID invoice. This is the ID item, because it's 1 in this SQL insert, and it's 2 in this SQL insert. So that's why this is 1 and this is 2. So this is the ID of the item. And then this is the quantity sold, so that's why the new dot quantity sold is 5 for the first time, and for the first item, and 10 for the second item. So when I'm running this now, well, there's a duplication because the table is not empty. First of all, let me just forward engineer so it can delete everything and start from scratch. And here we go. Then we come back and we insert them all. Look at what I'm doing. I'm just displaying before the insertions, and then I'm doing some insertions, and after I'm just going to display to see the results. So no, if I'm just selecting this is going to be the only thing to display. I just would like to run everything. So this is the result after the inserts. This is the result of invoice has item. So I have these 2 lines with the invoice is number 1, and then in the items it's 95 and 90. They all started items being all 100, but then after the inserts, this is what happened. They were updated by the trigger. Now what I'd like to tell you and to show you what happens if I delete. I would like to delete one item, this line over here. So if I delete, I need to update the item to put back what was subtracted before. I subtracted 10 because I sold this 10 of those of that item number 2. Now because I deleted from the invoice as item, I need to put them back in stock because I did not sell any of this item number 2. So I need to do something similar here, but instead of the minus, it should be a plus. right? This is what makes sense. If I delete an item from the invoice, the quantity stock should be updated, because when I insert an item, I subtract from the table. If I remove from an item, I should put it back. So that's the kind of statement that I need to do. So basically, what I'm going to be doing is that after a deletion is going to happen on the invoice as item, I need to do something which is basically the same thing here, almost, because there's some few changes. One of the changes is that it should not be minus, it should be plus to put it back. But there's also another change. Instead of when I'm deleting, there's no new value that was inserted. There's no new value that came from that query of that deleted something. It's just the old one that we need to get. So we're getting the old one. Now I have two triggers watching that same table. Whatever something is inserted into that table, I'm going to subtract from the table item. If I'm deleting from the table invoice as item, I need to add to the table item. So it's basically two things. When I'm selling a product, I'm removing that product from my stock. When I'm said, oh no, I made a mistake, I did not sell that product, so I remove it from like the invoice, then I put it back in stock. Something like that. Let's just forward engineer again, so I can have all the triggers in my database. Now if I'd like to see the triggers, I can just refresh, so I can see whatever is refreshed here. If you click on tables, invoice has item, you can see that one of the things here are the triggers, and you can see that I have two triggers, one after insert, the other one after delete. Fine. Now I don't want to do this manually. I already inserted these two items. I just would like now to show you what happens if I just delete. When I delete this 10 from the item number 2 should be, for the item number 2, 10 should be pushed back, and then the quantity in stock should be back to 100. That's what we expect. Let's run and see. So this is what we had before. Oh no, what is that? Is this what we had before? Oh yes, of course, because there's I just made the forward engineering, so the invoice is empty, the invoice item is empty, and this is still empty. I'm just deleting something, but there's nothing. So if you delete something, there's nothing to delete, so nothing happens. So I would like to do something different. Then I should add them, and then so let's add them all. So now I have them, and after adding them, I will delete the second one, or it could be the first one. Let's just delete the first one. If I delete the first one, the item number 1, then for the item number 1 I should put back the 5. So because this is the new quantity sold, now this is not the new, the old quantity sold was 5, and the old ID of the item was 1, so it's going to delete this. Notice one thing: when I delete, in the condition I put both columns, both values for both columns. Why? Because they are the key. When I would like to delete only one item from a table, I put a condition on the key. The primary key is going to allow me to have only one item. If I put a condition on a primary key, I'm sure that only one item is going to be affected. So now in this table, invoice has item, the two columns are the primary key. So that's why I need to put them, both of them. Why is that? Because maybe I have many invoices, and if I just put item number 1, and it happens that item number 1 was also sold in invoice number 10 or number 5, it's going to be deleted as well, which is not what I want. I want just one item to be, one line to be deleted. So I'm just specifically saying in invoice number 1, the item number 1, this is the one to delete. And when this is going to be executed, now when this is going to be executed, this is the data. So the old quantity sold is going to be 5. The old price, well, I'm not using it, but this is old item, old invoice. So when I come back here, this old quantity sold will become 5. Old item is 1. So what I'm expecting then is that instead of 95, it should be back to 100 for the item number 1. So let's see this in action, and let's run. So this is what we had before, and this is the item that we had before. Now after removing that line, we only have one line here, and it's back to 100. Okay, any questions? Easy?
It was 95 or?
It was 95. After doing the deletion, it became 100. Why? Because when this was here, when I deleted this thing, the quantity sold was added back here. So now that's why we added 5 to 95, it became 100.
But this hashed here, how did we do?
This thing?
Yes.
This was not executed from a query, but it was executed from
Trigger?
the trigger, because I have a trigger after insert, after delete. So whenever this deletion happened, the trigger came into action, and then he replaced these old quantity sold with the values that were there before for that line that was affected.
If both of them were active, so it will be 105, because both of them are
What do you mean both of them?
the line and the
Trigger.
trigger.
Yes, then it will be 105. If you execute this thing here, then of course it's going to increase the trigger is going to make it 100, and then this one will make it 105. But this is the manual way. I don't want to do it manually. I want just to show you this is what is needed to be executed, and we would like the trigger to do it. So is it okay? Now I'm just going to insert a new one for this number 3, whatever. So when I'm adding this number 3 now, well, basically the same thing. Now this number 3 becomes deducted. So we have subtracted 20 from 100, so it was 100 before, now it's 20. So this is the after insert. Now what if I did something? After inserting this, I realized, oh no, I made a mistake. This was not the right thing to add. I want to update now the table to change this from 20 to only 2 for that invoice number 1 and for that product number 3. So there were only 2 screens that should be there, not 20. Now after inserting this, this becomes 80. Now what I need to do is to
Update
put back the 20
after update. Trigger after update.
and then just remove 2. What I need to do to update the item? After doing this query over here, I should update the item, right?
Yes.
So I should update the item and set the quantity sold to be what?
Quantity sold. Old quantity.
I said quantity sold, but that's not. So the old quantity.
Yes.
So the old quantity. What is the old quantity? That's 80.
Yes.
So old quantity, which is this 80. Actually, when you said the old quantity of the item, that's what I understood.
Yes.
But maybe this is not what you want. What you want probably is the old quantity sold. So first of all, if you cannot do something manually, you cannot tell the computer to do it automatically. So that's why, if you noticed, every time I try to tell you, okay, this is what manually we should do, so we can now understand, okay, this is what I should do, so let's make the computer do it instead of me doing it. But if you don't know what to do, the computer will not know for you, so you have to find what needs to be done. So now let's try to understand what needs to be done. I need to update this, right? So it's 80. Now after inserting this thing, it was 80 because I subtracted 20. Now what are the corrections to do if it was not 20 that I wanted? I wanted only 2. So what should I do to the item?
Old quantity sold minus.
Let's not put any formula here. Give me what's the result. What are you going to do?
What was sold?
What was sold? What was before? It was, sorry, here. It was 80, right? So I need to take this 80, add those 20 that I subtracted before,
And minus 2.
and then remove the 2, and then I'm now saying that this is the correct value of the amount of this item that I'm selling. Are you all with me? This is the quantity stock. This is what was there. What is here? Now what is here is 80. I would like to add the old quantities sold
Minus new quantity sold.
minus new quantity sold. Of course, this is not going to be here because it doesn't make sense. There's no new old here. The new and old are only available inside of a trigger. Outside of the trigger, like here, that's not the place where I need to put this. Here I can just put the numbers and that's fine, but this is not where I'm going to put the new and the old. The new and the old should be in the triggers. So this is what I'm going to do. So, but it's not done yet. I'm not done it. I'm not like to make sure that I don't forget the where, because if I forget the where, all the quantities are going to be added 20, remove 2. It's going to mess up all my stock. So where what? Now you're confused because I'm using data from 2 tables, but the columns that I need to use are from where? This quantity stock is in which table? Because this is what I'm updating. So all the columns that I need to put are from item. Do I have ID invoice in item? Just in case you forgot, this is item. So what do I have in item is ID, name, quantity stock, and selling price. I don't have ID invoice, I don't have ID item,
Only ID.
but I have ID. And which ID is that?
The monitor, which is 3, I guess.
So the ID item is 3. So this is what I need to execute in order to keep the stock in good shape. I mean, to be consistent with what just happened. So let's try to run this, but instead of running it ourselves, we would like to make it in the trigger. So trigger that happens to where? What was updated? Which table was updated here? Invoice has item. So that's the same place when I need to make a trigger, because after this table is updated, I need to do something. So this is where the triggers goes. This is where the triggers goes. So after update, I'm going to be doing something. So what am I going to do? Well, basically similar to this, but with just some minor changes. Actually, this is not a complete answer, but let's what I'm showing you here is just like a fix, but it's not the complete answer. I'm going to show you why. So we said we add the old value. This is what we did. The 20 is what was there before. What was the old quantity? In where? Old quantity, which quantity? The quantity sold or quantity sold in stock? It's here. Where was the 20? This is where was the 20. So the 20 was here. So it's the quantity sold inside of. That's why if you use this new or old, the values are coming from which table again? Invoice has item. So quantity sold is what's in invoice has item. So this is what I'm going to get things from. So this is the old quantity sold. This is the 20. This is how it was before. Let me just refresh this so you can see how it was before, because I made some changes earlier. I just made it 2, but actually I just wanted to be back to how it was. But okay, how can I just revert? So this is how it was. Now when I'm running this update, I have 2 things. I have the old value and the new value for every column. The old value for the quantity sold is 20. The new value is the 2. The old value for the ID invoice is 1. The new value is the same because it was not changed. Same thing for the item, same thing for the price. The only thing that changed is the quantity sold. So the new and old for the ID of the invoice or item are the same. The new and old for the price is the same, but the new quantity sold is different from the old quantity sold because of this thing here. All right? Not sure? Now what I'm doing here is this thing over here. Old quantity sold minus new quantity sold. This is going to be the 20. This is going to be the 2. What is the expected outcome? If I execute this thing, what is the expected result? This becomes 2 and this becomes 98. Why? Because it was 80, I put back the 20, so it becomes 100 minus 2, 98. Let's see it working, but we need to do a couple of things before, because the trigger now is not here. If you see, the triggers is not here. If I want to do that, then let's forward engineer again. Now you can see I have 3 triggers and they're coming. They just arrived. Let's just now insert the data. So what do we have here? We have item 2 and item 3. So I just add these item 2 and item 3. This is item 2, this is item 3, and this is the invoice, because we cannot insert these unless we have this one, right? Why?
It's not created word.
This is a foreign key to ID invoice. So if I don't have number 1, ID invoice number 1, I'm not able to insert in this table invoice as item, because you cannot put, for example, something like this. Why? Because in table invoice there's no invoice number 5. That's the job of the foreign key. So it makes sure that the value that you're using exists somewhere else. So that's why I need this. And let's run everything. So before running, I just would like to have without these updates so I can see everything, and then let's run. So now this is what I have. Before what is that?
It's after selling 20.
Sorry?
After selling 20.
Yes, this is after selling 20. I'm just surprised that there are more than 2. That's why, you see, I'm surprised. These are some they have some extra. I don't know why. But, oh, there was some changes. I made some changes. That's why cancel or don't apply. And same thing. I made some changes here. That's why they are just waiting for me to apply them. So okay. Now I have these 4 and these 4. It was like this before. It was empty, and there were 100 all of them. Now 90 and 80 because I have 10 and 20 for these 2 products. Now the fun part. Let's just put comments on these inserts and uncomment the update. Let's run. So now I updated this. Instead of being 20, it's 2, and instead of being 80, now it's 98. So it's working. Okay. So that looks good. We're doing a good job. Up to when we realize, well, what happened if I add more invoices? So this is invoice number 1, and let's put them together. Invoice number 2. The invoice number 2 is whatever for another customer. Let's say we have, because this is the ID of the customer, if you remember. You do remember, do you? Not sure? Let me put the columns. The first one is the ID. The second one is the date. I don't need to put this. The third one is the ID of the customer. And the fourth one is the total. How do I know that? Well, I designed the database. ID, invoice, ID, date, ID customer, and total. Sorry. So this is the ID is number 2, the date is this date. Well, let's push it back a little bit. And then the 2 is the customer number 2. Who is the customer number 2? That's Abdullah. And then 0 is the total, because for now I'm not managing it. So now I'm going to insert this, and inside this I would like to insert some couple of items. So now I have this invoice, but I don't have anything inside of that invoice, so let me just insert something in that invoice. So let me just do some copying. This is invoice number 2, and it makes more sense to have them all together, because now we're having a lot of code. And yeah, this was invoice number 1. Let me just put this as a comment, and well, we don't care about this for now. And then let's put now invoice number 2. So I just inserted this, did I? If I try to run it again, I have an error message, which means that this duplicated 1, 2 key. Oh, because I'm trying to insert again in number 1. Which one is trying to insert in number 1? I thought I commented it. Oh, this one. So I cannot insert in this one. I would like to insert in number 2 now. So in number 2, I have product number 1. Okay, what is product number 1? And pen. I'm going to take 10, for example. And then let's insert more. I'd like to insert also number 3.
Did we create invoice number 2?
That's a good point. Let's have a look. Yes. So we have invoice number 2, but we don't have anything inside there. So let's just put something. So now if I put something, look, what I'm expecting is that this item number 1 becomes 90. Item number 2 becomes 88. Number 3 becomes 88. So let's run the before and after again. So this is what was before, this is after. So this is because we added in invoice number 2, the item number 1 is 10, and the item number 3 is 10 as well, and they have the same price. Well, we don't care. But now if we look here, this item number 1 was 100 minus 10 becomes 90. Item number 3 was 98 minus 10 becomes 88. So everything is working fine, no problems. Okay? Now let's the fun part begins. What if I said, okay, this is this thing here. Oh no, I made a mistake. I think just in a couple of minutes you will not be happy to hear this kind of, oh no, I make a mistake, because it will involve a lot of thinking and trying to find some problems to how to solve them. So anyways, somebody made a mistake. Instead of putting this thing in item in the first invoice number 1, it should be in instead of putting it in number 1, it was put in number 2. So basically I want this to be number 1, not number 2.
To get all the information from number 2 to number 1.
Now I just need to move this from number 2 to number 1. Right? So I just inserted this thing. Let me just push it here. Now I realized that I made a mistake, and I would like to write the query to update this invoice has item to be able to set the ID of the invoice to be equal to 1, where the ID on the invoice was equal to 2 and the ID of the item is equal to 1, because this is the one I would like to change. It's 2 here. I just would like this, where it was 2, I want it now to become 1. That's what I'm doing here. Does everybody see what I'm trying to do?
Yes. But then you make a copy. Both of them will be in both places.
What do you mean both places?
I mean, if you update number 2, you're not deleting from invoice number 2.
I'm not deleting, no. So if I'm updating, actually, which trigger is going to run the after update?
Right.
So this trigger after update, this is what it's going to do. It's going to update the item, set quantity stock equal quantity stock plus. Okay, what is the old quantity sold? Here. The old quantity sold is 10. So it's going to add 10.
Yes.
What is the new quantity sold?
Also 10.
Also 10. So it did not change, because I did not change the quantity. So minus new one and old one, no problems. Now this is going just to update the item, and with the plus 10 minus 10, which doesn't change the item, because this does not affect the quantities in stock, right? So if I do this, it's going to be fine. It's just updated this thing now, and of course I had to multiply. Now instead of having this part of 2, it's just part of 1. And you notice that the sorting was changed. Did you realize that? Because generally it's sorted based on the primary key. But the information is there. Now let's have a look at the stock. It was like this. It stayed as it was, because no change was made to the stock. So our trigger, alhamdulillah, looks good. It's still working as expected. But then there's something. There's a situation when this is not going to help. This is not going to work. Which situation?
You want to change both.
Exactly. Very good.
Voice and the data.
Exactly. What if now this is what I'm having. This item number 1 is here. I can say, oh no, I made a mistake again. Somebody told me that it should be invoice number 1, but actually it's invoice number 2, but the quantity should be 20 instead of 10. So now what I'd like to do is that set the invoice to be 2 again, where it was 1, but then I would like to have something else. Is that I would like to set the quantity sold to be equal to 20 instead of the 10 that was there. Now if I do this, what should happen? The 10
It's in work also.
sorry?
It's going to work.
Yes. But let's see what is going to be happening.
Already updated.
Now the new quantity and the old quantity is different, right? The item is this one, no problems. I'm just changing the invoice, and then changing the invoice is not going to be affecting the item, but this thing here, this quantity sold. Now what was the old quantity sold? 10. So this is going to come here and put this. I'm going to put the 10 back and subtract the 20, which still that's okay. So if I do this, it should be fine. So where's the problem that I was talking about? So this is okay. Then now it becomes 20. Before it was 1 and 1, and then it was 10, and then the pen was 90, but because I sold them and make them 20, so it becomes 20. So 80, because I just put back the 10 and then subtracted 20. That now
The problem is when you
Is
apply
half.
price.
no. The problem if I change the quantity and the item. But if you can wait, it would be better because you're going to miss the best part.
Won't stay.
It's better. 5 minutes. Now what happens if, oh no, I made a mistake, but this is not the mistake, this is not the one. The item number 1 is not the one that I need to change. This, in this invoice number 2, it's item number 2. So the item should be number 2, but the quantity is 5. Well, let's make it simple. Let's make it 2 again. For that invoice 2 and 1. So here it is. This is how it is right now. Now I'm doing 2 changes. The old item, what is the old item?
1.
It was 1. The old item had 20. So now if I'm changing this to item number 2, these 20 should go back to number 1. And then 2 should be deducted from item number 2. So I need to affect 2 items here, not 1. And here I cannot do that. What would be nice is just to delete from the old one and add to the new one, which is the new ID item and the old ID item, because they're different values. This is why this is what we need to do. But actually what I have, I'm assuming that the new item and old item are the same, which is not always the case. So that's why when you have an update, the best way to do it is to include the delete before, and then you remove the previous one and add the new one. It's logical. Actually, you can just swap them, but it's logical to memorize that. Okay, remove the old one and then do the new one, which means you're going to be doing the delete and then doing the update. In other words, you just copy the delete and then you do the insert. If we'd like to make sure that it's working, let's just put this old. What is the old quantity based on our example that we just were doing? The old quantity is 20. So this is going to add 20. Where the old item, what's the old item ID of the item? The old ID of the item is 1 because this is how it was. This is the old one. So the old is 1. So this is the first query that is going to be executed just to put back the 20 where they were. Now I'm just taking this 20, put it back to 1 because it's going to change. Now what is going to change? The ID item now becomes 2, which is the new ID item is 2. So for these 2, I'm just going to subtract the new quantity sold, which is what is the new quantity sold? 2. So this is what I'm going to be doing. Return 20 to the number 1, subtract the 2 from the number 2. And this is why, because I'm doing this in the situation where the ID of the item has changed. If the ID item is the same, I'm not changing the ID of the item, this is still working because it just do them in 2 steps. But doing it this way, it's more general. It can work in all cases, even if I'm changing the ID of the item and the quantity at the same time. You're free to go now. So that's why when you have generally this kind of update, you would like to, this is the delete and this is the insert. So you just combine these two. Later on we'll see a better way, because it doesn't make sense to just do a copy and paste. If you have a lot of things in this after insert, you would like to copy them all, well yes, but there's a better way. There's a way how to give this a name and call it. But this is something we're going to see later, inshallah. So now I would like to generate this thing, and in order for me to generate and not lose data, because I already have the data, I don't want to lose it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going just to create the trigger from here. But notice I have a problem. If I would like to create the trigger, let me just keep this in a separate file. Here. This is the code to create the trigger. So just do this. I just don't need to have that. But the problem, the trigger exists already. I need to drop the previous one and create a new one. Drop trigger. Okay, that's trigger. I can put if exists, but I know it exists, so. And then create this trigger. But did you realize something? I have a semicolon here, which makes this thing that this instruction stops here. And I have another semicolon here. So now you see I have 2 mistakes. I want to show you why when we do this forward engineering we have this thing over here. And this delimiter, what does this mean? This is the right time for this. Now, as you can see, this cannot be executed because of this is okay. If I run this thing, just this line over here is okay. As you can see, drop trigger, that's fine. The trigger now doesn't exist. If I just refresh, it's not there yet anymore. But now if I'd like to create this trigger, if I try to run it, it's going to tell me, sorry, there's a problem, because the syntax stops at the semicolon because it thinks that this is where everything is stopped. But then it sees that there's something missing, which is this end over here is missing. So how to tell the MySQL that now don't stop at this? We use the delimiter. Now I'm changing the delimiter. Now the delimiter, the end of the instruction is not going to be the semicolon. It's going to be something else that I decide to be. So I can do this thing or whatever, anything that you put. Sorry, there's some of them are some keyword, whatever. It just, this is your delimiter. So every time you're going to see this, it's going to say, okay, this is where this is my new semicolon. But actually it's like a convention is to put it this way. So now what I'm saying is that this is my new end of instruction, and when I'm going to create everything, that's my end of instruction. And if I want to go back to my semicolon, if I would like to use the semicolon again later on, I just put it back as how it was. So now I'm just going to change the way the semicolon works. Now it's not the semicolon, it's not the end of the instruction, is this one the end of the instruction? So what it's going to run, this is going to see like some kind of semicolon, which is going to say this is where the instruction stops. You can run it, and then it's going to put it back how it was. Yes?
Then inside this delimiter, the semicolon is not where it stops.
Yes, no, it's not where it stops. It's just like a...
So what's the purpose of semicolon?
Because when the trigger is going to run, he needs this semicolon to be here because you have two statements.
But if it's not where the statement should stop, then what's...
Well, the statement should stop here. Inside of the trigger, it should stop here. But when defining the trigger, I don't want it to stop to use this as a way to stop the delimiter, to stop the statement that I'm trying to execute. My statement starts here and ends here because I would like to include all these things in. All this is one statement, but the semicolon is going to prevent this from happening. So I need to change the semicolon on this session, not on the whole database. On this connection, now the semicolon does not work as expected, but the semicolon is still the default delimiter for instructions when you have more than one instruction. So when the trigger is going to run, the trigger expects the semicolon to be there. So that's why we're not removing the semicolon at all. I mean completely. We're just disabling it temporarily until we create our trigger.
So this is maybe double S works as a parentheses or something like that?
It works like what's the job of the semicolon? It tells that this is the end of the statement. So now this becomes the symbol of the end of the statement instead of the semicolon. So I'm telling the MySQL, if you see semicolon, don't think that this is the end of this statement. Because what's inside, this is the whole thing, and there's some semicolons inside of it, so don't stop at them. So let me just run it again. If I run it again, there's going to be a problem because if exists now is required. Okay, it's created if exists, nothing happened, but then this one, create trigger, this was done. You see the delimiter is not seen as some kind of execution like a statement. It's just like I'm telling, okay, know that I'm changing some behavior of how things work. So this is why if you go here and go to this forward engineering, you're going to see that there is some delimiter. You see the use company, usually we put the semicolon. No, the semicolon does not work. It's this one. That's the new semicolon. But we still need the semicolon here because when the trigger works, it expects that every query should end with a semicolon. And that's why you see we can keep using, we're creating different triggers. We just change the delimiter once, and then we do whatever we need to do. And after that, when we're done, we just bring it back because there's some other statements that need the semicolon. So that's the general idea. So now that we have the trigger, let's just refresh so you can see it. We have now this after update. If I execute now this line, this one over here, what I'm expecting the 20 to be back to the item number 1, which now this item number 1 should become 100, and then the item number 2 is going to be reduced by 2. We subtract 2 from the item number 2, which here should be 88 again. So this number 2, 90 becomes 88. Everybody agrees, right? Let's run. We change this from 120 to 22 because this is how it was, 120. Now it's just 22, and the items, they were 80. It should become 100, and this should become 88. 188, and this is going to work now in all cases. Even if I do just another change related to only, for example, if I go here and then change, I don't know, this from 10 to 20, this is product number 2. So it's going to, without changing the item, just the quantity, just update just the quantity in stock. If I no, that's not what I want. Update, let's just do something like this. Which one you would like to change? Let's say let's update the quantity sold from 2 to 20 for the ID price. Last one you said. So this from 10. Okay, so ID invoice number 2, ID item number 3, the quantity sold now becomes 20. So what is the expected outcome? Instead of 88, we need to put back the 10, so it becomes 98, and take 20, so it becomes 78. So I'm expecting here to become 78, and let's see it. The items is 78. So it works in all cases. Either we change the ID of the item or we don't. Is it okay? So now what I'd like you to do, make this total work with both the insert, update, and delete. And then we make the customer work total that is going to be updated. All right?